Okay, let's go on to number 5. What you get is what you give. So I forgot to tell you earlier, but I did at one point in my life spend a year in seminary. And I didn't really think I was going to end up being a clergy person. But I was fascinated by the world religions. And in my year in seminary, I tried to read all the major religious texts of every one of the major world religions. Now, if you do that, I can tell you one thing's going to happen. You're going to start to discover that they have a lot in common. And you kind of wonder, why do we fight so much about our religion when, in fact, if we looked at what we held in common, it would be far more than how we're different? Well, anyway, the golden rule, it turns out, shows up in every major religious text. Doesn't matter what the religion is. Isn't that interesting? And now you guys probably learned it as a kid as, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Does that sound familiar? And other spiritual texts say it slightly differently. But what I love about the golden rule, from a psychological perspective, is you can turn it inside out, stand it on its head, and it's still true, which is what I've done here. You do unto others as you have done unto yourself. Have you ever noticed that if you're having a really bad day, the people around you are really high risk for also having a bad day? Right? In other words, you do to yourself, you're going to do it to somebody else. So as you do unto yourself, you will in some way or another do unto others. Your relationship with yourself is a mirror image in some way or another of your relationship with other people. So when somebody comes in, if I were doing therapy, which I don't do anymore, but if I was, somebody comes in and their big complaint is their relationships stink. They're really horrible. They're really unsatisfying. What do I know? I know that this person's relationship with themselves stinks. It's really unsatisfying. And until their relationship with themselves gets better, they're never going to have their relationship with other people get better. So then they wanted to come in and work on all those people out there that weren't relating the way they were supposed to be relating. And then they got the sad news that, no, we're going to work on your relationship with yourself. And do you see that that's where your power is? If I can change how I relate to myself, I change how I relate to other people. So if you don't like what you're getting in a relationship, take a look at what you're giving. If you don't like what's happening in a relationship, you need to do something different. You can choose to do the loving thing even when you don't feel loving. That's the great thing about being a human being. We used to try to figure out what separates humans from other species. For a long time we thought it was language, until we started listening to dolphins, who seemed to have fairly sophisticated language. And then we got this gorilla. The gorilla's name was Coco. And someone figured out, people were taking these chimpanzees and they were trying to raise them as children in their families, and they did everything they would with an infant child, and they thought, well, we'll get the little chimp to start talking. Nobody ever looked at the fact that the chimp's voice box is so totally different than the human voice box that they can't make human sounds, so that there's no possible way that a chimpanzee is ever going to imitate human language. So then somebody got the bright idea, then let's do sign language. And so they found this gorilla, and they started messing around with sign language. Well, this gorilla learned close to 1,000 words and was able to put them together in sentences, like 3 or 4 words, with a subject, a verb, predicate. And we're thinking, geez, the gorilla's learning language. So language didn't separate us. But does this separate us? We can choose to do the loving thing even though we don't feel loving. So Connie and I are in a really deep misunderstanding, communication breakdown. It's not Connie. I could tell. See the nonverbals? What the heck's he talking about? Remind me.
Sue.
It's Sue. It's Connie. There we go. Sue and I are in a deep misunderstanding. Okay? And it's really heating up, and I'm getting really angry and frustrated with her, and she's getting really angry and frustrated with me. And I'm getting so angry with her that I would love to let the air out of her eyeballs, but I could choose to listen to her instead. You see, you can always choose to do the loving thing even if you don't feel like it. Human beings can do that. I'm not sure animals can. You get an animal really angry, they're just going to react out of that. So, I used to say to my college kids, It's a wonderful time of your life. Do you remember it? Very often you're finding the first love of your life, right? And I have to give them the bad news about these things. You know, I'll say stuff to them like, you know, until you're totally okay with yourself, you can never be okay with another human being. And then I'll say, do you know that it's nobody else's job to make you happy? Happy is an inside job. It's not easy to find happiness in yourself, but it's not possible to find it anyplace else. If you're counting on some other poor sucker to make you happy, then you have set them up with an impossible task. Now, you could find happiness in yourself, and they could find happiness in themselves, and you could share the happiness with each other. That's different. Okay, but you know, first loves are more about, I found the person who completes me. Well, that's a crock. Nobody completes you. All right, you complete yourself, and then if you want to share your complete self, okay. So then they do another weird thing, and this has to do with what you get is what you give. So I'll say to them, I know some of you, how many of you are engaged? And there's always like 4 or 5 in my class who are engaged. And I say to them, so do you think you found love? Yeah. So now you have love. And I go, it's not the way it works. You don't have love. You do love. And as soon as you stop doing it, you stop having it. So I want to warn you, there'll come a day when you wake up in the morning and you're not going to be very loving. So you're not going to be doing love, and I'm going to tell you, you're not going to have love that day. So be prepared for that. Do you get what I'm saying? It's something you create by your moment-by-moment choices. It's not something that you have, and it's not something that somebody else gives you in that way. Okay, so what you get is what you give. Here's another one that's connected to this. I'll just share it with you briefly, but this is one of the great insights from Sigmund Freud. He noticed that whatever you say or think about other people, if you're brutally honest with yourself, you'll find that it's in some way or another true about you. Oh, bummer. Can you think back to all the negative thoughts and you might have had about somebody else? Turn it over. Is it in some way true about you? That's called projection. What we don't claim in ourselves, we see in other people all the time. This really happens in conflicts, right? So I was in a therapy group once because if you want to be a therapist, they make you go through therapy, at least in good programs. I'm in therapy all summer. There's 6 of us. We're in group therapy. We're in therapy 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, and this goes on for 8 weeks, 5 days a week, okay? So the guy, and we have a man and his wife who are therapists, really sharp. He walks in, sits down. We're all sitting in these comfy bean bags in a circle, you know, it's supposed to be real low-key. And he opens up by saying, before we start, I just want you to know I like all of you. Now, we've already learned about being genuine and authentic and all that stuff, you know, and we're thinking, boy, this sounds really, you know, creepy. This sounds really fake. And so somebody goes, how can you say you like us? You don't even know us. So we didn't know he had set us up, right? And then he said, well, let me talk to you about that. He said, you know, because I have to tell you, there are still times in my life when I encounter people and I intuitively and immediately do not like them. But then I figured out that that's not really right. That's not really honest, because I'm the one doing the not liking, but I'm pretending it's their fault. Have you ever noticed that that's what it's like when you do not liking? Because when you do not liking, you're always looking at everything that's wrong with the other person rather than anything that's right with them. Am I right about that? So he said, now what I do, he said, I still find people I don't like immediately. He said, but now what I do when I encounter somebody that I have that feeling like I don't like them, I say to myself, now this is how I'm going to take responsibility for my own not liking. I say to myself, what about that person threatens me? And then I take responsibility for my not liking. I don't make it the other person's problem. Take back your power. Is this making any sense? So, that's an interesting one to try out.